It's a
Great
sandbox.
question. Wide
It's a
shot.
soapbox. It's FanBox.
No. All right, here we are. Hi, I'm Xenatos1138. This is the Andor After Show. We are a couple of weeks late because we had life stuff. I was at Fan Expo Philly. Chase was biking a lot.
Oh, yeah.
And we want to talk about the last arc of Andor, maybe touch on some Rogue One and the A New Hope, just how it all ties together nicely. But with that, Chase, tell us where we can find you.
Yeah, you could find me at Forward Into the Black on most social media outlets. I am also on the Podwans podcast on Thursdays, and on Wednesdays, I'm on the Sill Pill podcast on Twitch with AJ at the Dork Place. But yeah, this was a heck of a finale. And like going back to it, and then again, like I said, like rewatching Rogue One and Andor right after, like it definitely changes some stuff for me. That like, and for the better, definitely for the better. But yeah, great finale for a great series.
It enhanced, like, watching Rogue One, because I watched. It's funny because I forgot headphones, so I watched Rogue One muted on the plane to Philadelphia, and I'm like, it doesn't matter. I know every word. I know what happens, so I'm just gonna watch it muted. But stuff like small stuff like Melshi, like you barely see Melshi in Rogue One, and then he dies, and it's like, oh man,
so painful.
Yeah,
So painful.
And Cassian's gun, he has that Kyle Katarn style gun until near the end, and then he takes Bix's pistol, and that's what he carries through Rogue One.
Yeah. It's just one of those things that when I was watching the finale and like kind of thinking about Rogue One and thinking about A New Hope, and this is no disrespect to the prequels or the prequel trilogy, but I was thinking like, this is how you do prequels, is you build up to what is about to happen, and I don't think that you need to be locked into like the second, the way that Andor and Rogue One both do, but like Andor very much feels like it is leading up to A New Hope, and so does Rogue One. Like even if you take away the fact like that the endings like seamlessly go into each other, I think you get that feeling of like you said, like you can have Cassian have his own cool Kyle Katarn blaster, but he doesn't have that in Rogue One. So what plot device, what narrative can we use to switch out the gun? Okay, he more or less loses someone that he cared about, and that person left something for them, and that was a blaster. And there's lots of other little things, like just how Andor kind of builds up things with the Force from like season 1 to season 2, going into Rogue One, and then finally at A New Hope. And it is this really cool build up and its own story as well into Andor. And I was like, this is like, if this came out in 1999, we'd be in a totally different world right now.
No, and even the stuff that I think that tied in by accident, like Vader seems very angry and kind of done with Princess Leia in episode 4. And now there's context. He just missed her. He watched the ship escape. So seeing her lie is just making him more annoyed. Like little things like that.
Yeah, and I think with the finale of Andor being so focused on the Death Star, like learning that like the energy program is a lie. They're just trying to fuel the Death Star. I think that there's something about it that, for me, like the trench run has always been my favorite thing, period, in Star Wars. But like there's so much more weight to that scene coming from even Andor season 1. Like watching Cassian building the Death Star on Narkina. and then up until season 2, where you start to realize they're definitely building the Death Star. With Krennic, talking to Dedra of like, say it, say the word, and then you get into Rogue One, obviously, and then A New Hope, and then when the Death Star explodes in A New Hope, it's like this like super like heavy feeling of like victory and relief, and it's like everything that happened wasn't for nothing. And I thought that was really cool watching A New Hope again, like with the finale in mind. So yeah.
And there's going to be no structure here. I want to just jump around everywhere, but like you're talking about when Krennic was talking to Dedra and the finger pointing on the head.
Oh my God.
That was all Ben Mendelsohn, and she rolled with it.
That was one of the, like, those, it's moments when you can tell, like, that's not in the script. And I was like, that's not in the script. And it's perfect. Just like jamming his finger into the top of her head. Like, I'm like, oh, it's very Krennic. And like her reaction, like they have embodied their characters so well at this point. And they've become so familiar with them that like just having that naturally happen between them was so wonderful. Like I thought that was just like an amazing scene between them. And
the actors themselves are hilarious. Watching them like in interviews and stuff, like those two and the actor for Cyril and her are just a great pairing in all of those interviews.
Yeah, it's one of those things, for as serious as a show as it is, it does look like everyone that was working on it had a really good time making the show. And I think that is starting to show more and more. Say what you will about certain Star Wars projects, but like, I think what shows more than anything is that the people working on things like Andor or Skeleton Crew or The Acolyte or Ahsoka is like, this is made by people who love Star Wars, like, and they enjoy making these things. You don't have a Harrison Ford or an Alec Guinness who doesn't want to be there. You don't have, Ewan McGregor, who's like kind of frustrated with everything going on and like is an established actor that is used to a very traditional style of directing and filmmaking. And, you're asking him to sit on like a blue piece of cloth to pretend he's on like some camel, right? Like it's so interesting to see like the interviews from Ewan McGregor and Harrison Ford about Star Wars and how they have such a different perspective on making Star Wars compared to the people who made Andor, the people who made Skeleton Crew, the people who made Acolyte. Like, they all love it. They're all like all in.
Yeah.
And I think that's really interesting to see.
Yeah. And the actress for Kleya, this was her first role out of acting school. And that's unbelievable to me.
That's crazy. I think I was like under the impression, like, I've never seen her or anything. It's like, oh, she's probably like, random person on random primetime TV show,
like a Broadway show or something.
Sure, or person, like one-off episode of Law and Order, something like that, right? And that's crazy. She's done nothing because she knocked it out of the park. And like from season 1, especially into season 2, and how she became such a much larger part of Andor in season 2. It was just wild. And I think that like the 10th episode just being about Kleya and Luthen, and also just shout out to the alien grandma in the wheelchair.
Scatting, I think she was doing.
Oh my God. So good.
The whole hospital scene, you're like holding your breath. She's sneaking through the hospital. She takes the grandma in the elevator and the grandma goes, eh? And Kleya just goes, what? It just, that cut the tension.
Haley and I have talked about doing that as a cosplay for Celebration. Like have her push me around in a wheelchair as I'm in like the little SpongeBob chocolate nematode.
Oh, that'd be great.
Calcite. I remember when they invented calcite.
Chocolate.
No, I love it's. You're right, because it cuts the tension for what I think is like the hardest hitting scene in the entire show. Like for me, like Kleya pulling the plug on Luthen was so difficult to watch. Like it was just so heartbreaking, and just like again, this is her first role. Like she nailed it. She crushed it. Like her just having that, like, there's no dialogue in that scene at all, and like just like the tear down the cheek and then the kiss on the forehead and running away without looking back.
Yeah.
Like just every moment of that was so good, and like getting a little bit of backstory between the two, I think, was also really good.
I spent the first bit of that going, "Oh, is she rescuing Luthen?" Then I realized, "Oh no, she has to kill him. There's no other option there.
There's
She knows it. She's there to kill him for sure."
So when Dedra comes to Luthen's shop, I was like, there's part of me that was like, is this where we get the, like, where Dedra turns on the Empire? And that's not what happens. And like when she put down the Star Path unit, I was like, oh fuck, oh man, we're in it, we're doing this. As soon as I saw Kleya go to the hospital, I knew she was going to kill him. I knew that was going to, like, this wasn't a rescue. There was no way she would get out of a rescue. And there's so much of that scene that was that whole, well, I shouldn't say scene. There's a sequence where it's like they think it's 3 people and it's just her. When she was walking into the hospital, I knew exactly what was going to happen, and I was like just bracing myself for it. And I was like, she's gonna make it out somehow, and she's gonna kill Luthen.
I spent that entire episode, maybe part of the next because it bled into the next one, just being scared that Kleya was going to get killed off. It's like, I know most of them are going to die, but I really, really want Kleya to live, and I got my wish.
Well, that was like the surprising thing, is like they didn't really kill off a lot of the cast the way that, like, you know, obviously Rogue One does. Like, I think, you know, you get some people that don't make it out, but I think like the only, I'm trying to think. Cyril obviously doesn't make it out. Cinta doesn't make it out, but I think everyone else, well, Brasso doesn't make it out, but like everyone else in the cast is fine.
I saw somebody like on social media about a week ago make an interesting observation that like the quote unquote good guys all died with their eyes closed, and the bad guys all died with their eyes wide open, like the shock or not at peace type of symbolism. I thought that was a really interesting observation too.
Well, I guess we don't see Partagaz. I did the scene with Partagaz. That was also, and obviously not nearly to the level and extent of Luthen and Kleya, but like, I think, I can't remember the guy's name, but the guy that comes to get him.
Oh, like, yeah.
Just the hand gesture for the stormtroopers, where it's like he knew exactly what was going on from like the moment he walked in that room.
I feel like before the sound even, like as the sound was happening, he put his hand up. Like he knew exactly what was going to happen. It's like, nope, stay here.
Yeah. Because I'm sure that there's some ridiculous protocol when an ISB, you know, you hear a blaster in an ISB, and he's like, nope, we're not following that protocol today. And I did like that. I like that Partagaz was listening to the manifesto. I thought that was, and I've seen a couple of interpretations of it. Was like, you know, was he finally understanding the rebellion, or was he just trying to understand, you know, what he had been fighting for or fighting against? Like, and I think that that's what I like about this show and its structure, is there is so much left to interpretation that like isn't at the show's detriment, where you're left wondering. It's just like, these are small details that you can kind of put your own inference on. And
it's kind of like in that moment when he's listening to the manifesto, like maybe just before that, he understood what the Death Star was. Like maybe he had a vague understanding before, then he understood it, heard the manifesto and go, oh my God, I've been wrong for years. And he just felt something.
I fall kind of like in the middle of like he's listening to it, and while it's one of those things like I don't agree with them, but I understand why they're doing what they're doing, and I understand why they won't stop. Where it's like I look at Partagaz as a through and through Imperial, and it's one of those things like, you know, where do you draw the line of like how long do you have to serve? What do you have to do? Where do you draw the line in the sand inside of a, you know, fascist dictatorship and tyrannical government where you can no longer say you're not a bad person? And I think that Partagaz was so past that point where he was a bad person. But I think I think he's listening to the manifesto out of empathy more than anything, if that makes sense. And I think you're also right as well, as like that's why he killed himself. It was just like, it's the Death Star today, what is it tomorrow? You know, it's never going to end. And you know, because I think I might even misremember, like he's like the meeting is with the Emperor, right? Or is it with, you know, when he comes to get him and before he shoots himself, I believe he's going to meet the Emperor, right? Like, or like the Emperor summoned him.
It's either the Emperor or somebody that's like, he might be going to prison. Something like there's going to be repercussions for whatever waits for him.
Yeah.
And speaking of which, I wasn't expecting Dedra to get the prison ending.
That was on nobody's bingo card. Like, that was a shocker. I did not see her making it out of this show alive. I was like, she's either going to kill herself in the same way that Partagaz did, or she's going to end up on the Death Star. Like, those are her, like, two outcomes. And the fact that, like, everything fell apart around her and she ends up on Narkina.
So somebody, and people really need to pay attention to context or just not be weird, but people were claiming that it was the same prison as, like the same exact block as Andor, like why is she in a male prison? I said, you can see women in the background.
I saw that, and that is like, I don't want to drag that on for too long. That is like a pathetic level of like critical thinking, media illiteracy. Like, it was very clear in season 1 that was an all male prison block.
I think they even pan out to like multiple of them.
Yeah, like the little hexagon, octagon, I can't remember what they are, but like the prison structures, like there are multiple in the ocean or lake or whatever they're in. It doesn't really matter. But like, yes, and like you're given the sense that the scale of these things is pretty tremendous. And to like, it's just like, this is like the whole Last Jedi thing of like, you can have Luke Skywalker narrating exactly what's going on in a scene and people will still be like, what's happening? Is he trying to kill? Why would he try and kill Ben like that? And it's like, that's not what happened. Luke told you that's not what happened. You missed the point. Holy cow. Like, to think that like you watched the end of Andor season 2 with Dedra in the Narkina suit, and like, yeah, they pan out and like I think it's like the top bunk of like the left or right of her, I can't remember, is like there's another woman laying down, and I'm just like, even if that weren't the case, you can assume, because there were no women on Cassian's block, like, and she's now in prison, they probably have separate men and women's blocks, or at least buildings. You know, it doesn't matter what it is. It's just like,
never even crossed my mind, and then I saw that, like, why is that a complaint? What?
This is like nitpicking for the sake of like, either for the sake of engagement or just like, you are so confidently stupid. Like that stuff is wild, because it's like, and I hate the fact that we have to even talk about things, because like this is such a great moment of like unexpected storytelling, visual storytelling. Like, this is literally 6 seconds of footage of Dedra in Narkina, and you can inference so much from that, the way that this show has been shot, and it's relied on like visual storytelling. And I'm just like, man, it would be so crazy if we could just have a regular conversation about this stuff without some moron like ruining it. And it's like I am all for like needing to watch things multiple times to like, get certain subtext, or like I kind of missed the meaning here, or I missed the overarching message. Like, I think there's movies out there like The Matrix that are best viewed more than one times.
Yeah.
It's like, The Matrix is a totally different experience the second time you watch it. And like, I think that's great. And I'll be the first to admit, like, sometimes I need to watch stuff more than once, to fully grasp what's going on. I ain't that dumb. Damn.
It took me like, I want to say about when episode 3 was first in theaters, it took me about 6 viewings to realize that Obi-Wan had snuck onto the ship and he was hiding under the boarding ramp.
Sure. But I don't begrudge you for that, because that's not like, that's a detail, right?
Yeah.
Like it's one of those things of like, people show up randomly in Star Wars all the time. It just happens, right? Like we don't see Darth Vader go from the Tantive to the Death Star. Like, he's just there, right?
Yeah.
And that's fine. I remember like reading something that someone was saying one of the hardest things for George R.R. Martin, and he had that like blog post, recently that was, pretty hard hitting, but it was like, he ran into the issue of like, one of his plot points was how long it took to get people from point A to point B. And like, as everything is converging, you start to realize like, oh, I wrote an entire book about someone marching from this place to this place. Now I have to get them even further, and I have no time to do it. Like, that stuff can, it can be tricky to write around stuff like that. But we also have like, I forgot who said it, like hyperspace, runs at the speed of plot.
Yeah.
Where it's just like, it is as fast or as slow as it needs to be for whatever the story
like Pablo Hidalgo.
I think that's who it was. It was like, there will never be a like scientific, like, you can measure how long it takes to get from Tatooine to Naboo. Like, that's never happening.
Oh, you got like, what was it? I think one of my favorites is in episode 4 when Han is like, okay, we've outrun those Imperial slugs. And then after a conversation, hey, it looks like we're coming up on Alderaan.
Yeah. Like it's, you can, this is the thing that like, I've always said that I feel like Star Wars is best viewed under a magnifying glass, not a microscope.
Yeah.
And I think it's when you don't try to pick it apart bit by bit by bit, because you could do this with Andor. Like, there's questions on like how some people got out of like Imperial blockades and like lockdowns and stuff like that. Like, how does Cassian keep flying away when like the Imperial, regime has like their full fist clenched around a planet and he just happens to fly away? Like, the amount of times he just escapes Coruscant is kind of crazy in this show.
Yeah, there's like in other shit, there's chain codes or security.
Oh yeah,
and
there's whole plot devices and like the Bad Batch of like, they can't get past security to get off of like a backwater planet, but to take off of Coruscant, you just push the thruster up and you're out. Like there's, it is all in the service of a better story, and it's not about like how accurate is it to quote the lore or the rules of Star Wars, because like you could say like, yes, the Millennium Falcon can get to can get from Tatooine to where Alderaan was located in a matter of hours, but a different ship may have a different hyperdrive, and maybe it takes a week to get from one place to the other. And it's like, I think that there's fun in that, and I think that a lot of people have taken the fun out of that when it comes to Star Wars, or not even just Star Wars, like just things in general, video games, Lord of the Rings, Game of Thrones, Marvel. It's just like, have fun with it. Like, it's instead of everything being terrible, like be curious about it. Why is it this? Like, oh, okay. Because that's what I remember growing up with Star Wars, right? Was like these weird questions. Why does Obi-Wan disappear? Like what makes Obi-Wan disappear in A New Hope? And like we had all these theories. I remember we had a theory that Boba Fett had 16 eyes, 8 going this way, 8 going that way. And then he was a, small child on a ocean planet.
It's so back then too, there wasn't a whole, like, there was barely the internet.
Yeah.
And just, there was reference books. There was, like CD-ROMs that had just random facts on it. Like I remember reading, I consumed everything I possibly could. And there was some CD-ROM I had that had like the schematics of a ship, or like I knew Star Destroyer stuff. I knew like TIE Bomber, like all these different ships were listed, and I consumed all of it.
Yeah, because I had like those, like they were like larger than a regular 8.5 by 11 books, and they were usually around like 50 to 100 pages long, and it was like reference guides, where it would be like. It would have a picture of like the 2 TIE fighters and Darth Vader's TIE Advanced, and it would say like these are TIE LN fighters, and this is the TIE, like I think it's the AD Advanced, and it was like it would let you know, and then it would say like this is the T-65 X-wing from Incom Corporation, and it was like these little guides and just like nuggets of lore. That like were really cool, and like I remember like they would have a picture of like the lightsaber that Obi-Wan gives Luke, the one that was Anakin's and all that. And it was like, it would be stuff like, this is the activation switch, and here's the dial. And I remember like, I could be misremembering it, but it's like, this controls the length or the width of the blade and stuff like that. And it's like, that was always so cool just to have little factoids. And I wasn't concerned about whose birthday got contradicted. Like it was just like, man, this is so cool just to know these things and like to see, and like when I go back to like season 2 of Andor, like the beginning, and they open with Sayonara, like I freaked out because it's like this is the first time we've seen Sayonara, and it's like, is this what I thought Sayonara would look like? Like no, I'm thinking Sayonara would have like an in orbit construction yard, not one on the planet, which is fine. I'm just stoked to see it.
I think those first few minutes when I saw it with Sayonara, when I saw the ship, I thought immediately of you. It was like, Chase is having a field day right now.
I was literally like, I'm not like, I'm like terrible at React content because I would just be like, cool. I was like, you're fucking joking. Haley was like, what are you doing? I was like, that's where they built the TIE fighters. No, like, it's like, sure, I could put on my super cynical face and be like, that's not how it would work at Sayonara because of X, Y, and Z lore, and we have this comic that says Sayonara was located here, and it's like, oh, dude, who cares? It's Sayonara. Be stoked about it.
And
like
that also reminds me, there was the origin of K2 before this, like a little side comic.
Oh, that like K2 and Cassian comic.
Yeah, and Tony Gilroy was annoyed by that. But I mean, it's fine. It's just, I don't even think it was like a comic at the end of another thing.
We're talking about the franchise that Leia says she remembers her mother, and then her mother dies in childbirth. Like, what are we getting upset over at this point? Like we're talking about the franchise where the first 2 movies, there is clearly a relationship building between Luke and Leia, and they turn out to be siblings in the 3rd movie. Like, if stuff like that bothers you and upsets you, like the origin of K2 was changed or something wasn't depicted the way you thought, it's like, you're in the wrong franchise, pal. Like, you need to find something else.
They also doubled down on the fact that Jin and Cassian are indeed coworkers.
Okay, the scene on the final, like when the Death Star is fired upon Scarif, like I was thinking about that, like when they're kind of like looking at each other in the elevator, and that's a pretty sensual look, I'll say. I'm glad they don't kiss in that, because I think it would feel weird if they kiss and then they introduced the whole Bix and Cassian thing.
Yeah.
But there is, I think it was Emily who brought this up, and I could be wrong, Stardust M, that was like, Jin makes sure that Cassian doesn't see the Death Star, like the Death Star light.
Yeah.
That like it's she needs to look at it, not him. I am not a shipper of any sorts, but I respect people who believe in the Jin and Cassian ship, but I also like, there's something beautiful of like thinking about Cassian on the beach holding Jin and Jin holding him, and him thinking about her and Galen and B2 and Bix and Marva and Brasso and everyone. And it's just like, there's something beautiful about knowing that, or like imagining that's what's going through his mind, is there's so many people that he's thinking of as the Death Star is about to take him out. That like, I think that supersedes any of the, ooh, are they, aren't they? Ooh, he's a little scandalous. And I was like, yeah, sure. You could interpret it that way.
Yeah. I don't begrudge anyone shipping most anything unless it's problematic. This is not problematic. This is fine.
No. Yeah. Like it, and I think it's also important, like, you know, it's been a year. I don't, you know, had things been different, like, I mean, he's got a kid. I guess that changes things.
Yeah, and I mean, like, it could be. I'm always, whenever I watch a Star Wars thing, I look at stuff and go, "Ooh, a story could be made about that." More
Oh,
stories
yeah.
about that stuff like this. Like, I want to see about Cassian's kid. I want
Yeah.
to see backstory with Kleya and Luthen. You know, I want to see where Kleya ends up. Like, there's
Yeah.
so many things you could touch on, and I mean, even if it's in comic book or book form, I will consume it for
I
sure.
would even be down, you know, live action or animation, like just a show that is kind of like a from a certain point of view style,
Mm-hmm.
where it is, you know, I want to see Vel at the Battle of Hoth. You know, I want to see Kleya at the Battle of Endor. You know, I want to see Bix at the Battle of Jakku. You know, you know, I want to see that stuff. I want to see different perspective. Like, I think that the original trilogy, I think, holds such a strong place in so many people's hearts that we'll never fully get away from it, and I don't think we should. I think stories like The Acolyte and like Skeleton Crew are great, that, you know, kind of give us fresh new takes. But there's something about these familiar things, that, like, I think Andor and Rogue One hit super well. If it's like, no, it doesn't have to be about Luke, Han, and Leia, but we can still tell a story like about the Death Star, you know. And so I think it would be cool to have more, being able to use these characters that we've been introduced to and finding them in different situations.
I'm just reading a comment.
Oh yeah, no, I agree. Like having the ability of these like small details to be left up to us, I think is great. And I agree with you. I want these stories. I want the story of Cassian's kid. I want the story of, you know, where, you know, growing up with Kleya, or what's Kleya up to, you know, during Return of the Jedi. But like, I don't need a story for what happened between arcs 2 and 3. You know, what happened on Gorman, you know, before it all went to hell. Like, I can think of that on my own.
I like a happy medium because like what the commenter said, I like that we can theorize and imagine what happened, but then it gets to a point where it goes so long, we start to theorize and headcanon something, and then a story is written that completely goes the opposite direction, which makes people mad about it because their fan theory didn't come true.
Yeah, I think that was. I think you have things like the sequel trilogy, Kenobi, and Book of Boba Fett. That's. I think that every single one of those pieces of media has their own individual issues. I don't think any of them are bad, but I think that's a lot of what it came down to was we had all of these books that contradicted each other, which is important to keep in mind. But we had all these books about what Luke, Han, and Leia were up to between, in the aftermath of Return of the Jedi. You had all these ideas from people that had been crafting ideas for 40 years at the time of like The Force Awakens. And when you look at something like Kenobi, like people have this idea of Kenobi in their head that like clearly didn't line up with what the producers, directors, and writers thought. And I don't think that the Kenobi show is bad. I think there's some scenes that don't work super well in that show, but I think overall the story it told was a really good one.
I think before Andor, Kenobi was my favorite live action, just because it got the most emotion out of me, and like all the scenes with Darth Vader, and with that mask halfway, and all of the symbolism was really good.
Yeah, I mean, another commenter said, about the sequel trilogy. Like, I would disagree with some of that, a lot of that. I think that I could say the three being disconnected from each other. I could say that about all three trilogies.
Yeah.
And like the follow up of like, I think Andor is a much better written. I think it is the best written piece of Star Wars. Period.
Yeah.
Even more so than the originals. But it's one of those things. Like, I was talking about this on the pod once with Nick, codename Fulcrum, and we were talking about like how a lot of the new media, like Andor, Rogue One, Kenobi, and like Rebels, has been leading up to add more to A New Hope specifically. There's not a lot that kind of leads up to Empire Strikes Back or Return of the Jedi. We get more of we got like season 6 and 7 of the Clone Wars, but overall, like it's either been after Return of the Jedi or leading up to A New Hope.
It's another case of accidental because when Alec Guinness looks at the hologram of Leia, like, to me now he looks worried. He looks more concerned than I thought he did before. And that's because of the context of, he's hung out with Leia. He's hung out with little Leia before. Yeah,
the Help Me Obi-Wan Kenobi, speech in the hut, like the full recording. Like, I remember watching A New Hope after Kenobi and being like, oh my God, this is like devastating. Like to watch, like, she's crying out for help for the person she knows who can save her. But the thing that we were talking about is like, we're obviously in the prequel renaissance. And I wonder how long that's going to last. Because I would not freak if the actors got recast. I would actually enjoy Alden Ehrenreich taking on Han Solo again. Like, I would be okay with him being a post-Return of the Jedi Han Solo.
I really want to see Alden do Han again, especially because Harrison Ford clearly never wants to do it again.
And he's too old. Like, way too he's
old.
Way too old to do it. And I enjoyed Solo. I mean, look, we can go back and forth on what Solo did right, what Solo did wrong, what Rogue One did right and wrong, what the sequels did right and wrong. But like, overall, these were all enjoyable products, and Alden did a good job. I liked his interpretation of a young Han Solo, and I think getting him more into that role and more comfortable, I think we can get post Return of the Jedi stuff with Han Solo, with Alden. I think you have someone like Sebastian Stan, who was he Mando or was he Book of Boba Fett Luke?
Sebastian Stan?
Yeah.
He wasn't. I don't think he was either. He's just a fan cast.
I thought he was in one of them. whoever played Luke in either of those
Yeah.
is fine.
Yeah.
Is fine. Like I'm totally okay. I don't need AI CGI Luke and Tarkin and Han and Leia anymore. Like give these roles to new people. Like let them tell the stories that we want to tell, because one of the other things with the sequels is like these are legacy sequels. What we get with like Alien and Predator and Hellraiser, everything these days is a legacy sequel now. These actors are old. Luke Skywalker's not doing backflips over stormtroopers because Mark Hamill's old. Like it's just not going to happen. Like you can't write the Luke from Heir to the Empire. You can't write the Luke from New Jedi Order because the actor has aged out of that.
The actor Luke, Mark Hamill, is around the same age that Luke Skywalker was when Legends ended. Like he might even be, I think he's around the same age now. So like, that's done. It's over with.
Yeah. Yeah, it's just one of those things of like, there's so many ways to interpret these characters. These characters are complex. I think that's what Andor's biggest strength was these multi-dimensional characters. Like Kleya is not just this type of character. There's so many different elements to her character. Mon Mothma is so complex as a character. And the thing about Andor, contrasted with the sequels, the prequels, and the originals, is that largely those movies are comprised of one-dimensional characters. Mm-hmm. Like, there's not a lot of depth to Maul. There's not a lot of depth to Palpatine. There's not a lot of depth to Han Solo. Like, he has a little bit of a, his heart changes at the end of A New Hope, and then he's kind of the rebel commander from there on out. Like, I love Leia. She doesn't really change that much from A New Hope to Return of the Jedi. She falls in love with Han, which is cool. But like when we look at the prequels, we have the same thing. Like we see Anakin shift and change because he has to go from the NASCAR racer at 9 years old to Darth Vader. Yeah. That's a huge shift you have to write, which is why the prequels caught so much crap to begin with. But like Padme doesn't really change. Grievous doesn't change.
Padme kind of regresses a little bit. I liked her the most in episode 1, and then it kind of just goes downhill.
She gets a less severe Jar Jar treatment as the trilogy goes on, and it's one of the worst parts of the prequel trilogy is just how sidelined she gets as time goes on. And she's like the most interesting character of the three, like by far. But like Jar Jar is a one-dimensional character, whereas I would even say like Rey is a multi-dimensional character. Finn is not. Poe is not. Holdo is not. Phasma is not. Hux has some change, and Kylo has probably more facets to his character than anyone else in the sequel trilogy. But Andor, Willman has more depth to his character than Obi-Wan does in like most of his content. Like, that's crazy. That is insane. That like a character with maybe 15 minutes of screen time, I'd say even less, has more depth, more nuance to them than mainline characters in like the movies. Mm-hmm. And it's not to dog on the prequels or the originals or the sequels. Those are all really good. And keep in mind, we're talking about 2-hour movie runtimes versus multiple seasons. Like, you obviously have more time to develop these characters. Like, you have more time to spend with Mon Mothma. You have more time to spend with Cassian.
They made Mon Mothma, who originally was like a 90-second...
She has a line about the Bothans. That is her character in Return of the Jedi.
She is a meme in Return of the Jedi, and then she's one of the most important characters in Star Wars.
She went from, like you said, she went from having a line about many Bothans died to get us this information to a fan favorite character. Mm-hmm. Like, and not just like she was for all intents and purposes, she was a glub shitto. Yeah. Like in Return of the Jedi. She's like, like Mon Mothma is the redhead lady with the short bob cut, and says the funny line about the Bothans. Ha ha ha, she's my favorite Star Wars character. I have the Mon Mothma action figure too. Oh my God. Mon Mothma is like the most incredible character in Star Wars. And that's what just Andor is so exceptionally good at. And this is something I hope to see more out of from Star Wars. I do not, because I've seen this, I know you've seen this online, that, oh, this is the new bar to pass when it comes to Star Wars writing. And I'm like, no, it's not. It's not. I want to see more stuff like this. I want to see writing with, I want to see more interesting and intricately woven stories in Star Wars. I also want Skeleton Crew.
Yeah.
Like, I loved Skeleton Crew. I want Resistance. I want stuff that has nuance to it, but is not super, super deep. Like, I love that stuff. Like,
it's kind of like, you know, with Andor being in this time period, then you have Rebels being around the same time period, and both two different mediums. And Rebels had some serious moments, but it also had a lot of goofy stuff. You know, with Chopper and you know, spray painting the TIE fighters. I mean, like, you still got a really quality experience out of both, but they're both approached differently.
Sure. Yeah, like Rebels definitely has a more young adult, youthful view of the rebellion than Andor does. And I think that's fine. Mm-hmm. I don't see a problem with that. I'm fine with that. That doesn't mean that, like, if the new Starfighter movie comes out and it has like more of a Top Gun element to it, where it's like, this is just fun. We're just flying spaceships and we're shooting down bad guys. Like, I'm cool with that. But if you also want to give me this very serious wartime epic, you know, with like PTSD and all the stuff, I'm down with both. Like, I'm not going to be upset with either.
I don't want to like go too far off topic, but I remember when I first watched Top Gun Maverick and I saw them lay out the plan. I'm like, this is the Death Star trench run.
Oh, it's 100%. Top Gun Maverick is great, right? It's the Death Star trench run. That's what they're doing. Like, I genuinely enjoyed Maverick, and, you know, honestly, rest in peace, Val Kilmer. But like, yeah, it's so goofy, like, at the end of the day, but like, I had fun with that movie. That movie is not trying to have a commentary on the military industrial complex and how much those fighter jets cost and how, like, it's a burden on the American taxpayer and how technology is removing, like, the art form of flying and pilots. Like, there's a story there. There's 100,000% a story there to be told like that. They didn't tell that story, and that's okay. You have stories like Devotion that can tell that story. You have stories like Dunkirk that can also tell those types of stories. Both are fine. And I think Star Wars isn't immune to that. Like, if Mando and Grogu is a, you know, happy-go-lucky adventure film with not a lot of, you know, messaging behind it, and it's just a fun adventure with Mando and Grogu, great. I'm all for it. I'm here for it.
The movie, I'm not sure if it's that one or a separate one, but they're calling it Heir to the Empire, and I'm not gonna lie, a part of me is gonna be really upset, like, or disappointed if at least a piece of it isn't actually from the Heir to the Empire trilogy, and they're just using the name to grab people.
Yeah, I can see both sides of that, where it's just like, it is. We can assume it's going to be Thrawn focused or centric in some way, shape, or form. But at the same time, like, I think it's an opportunity to take the elements of the expanded universe that still work in canon and bring those in bit by bit. We're never going to get, you know, the timeline of the Thrawn, the original Thrawn trilogy, just doesn't work with the prequels. It doesn't work. So, like, I want to see more Heir to the Empire. We're not getting Mara Jade. You know that, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. It's not happening. I'm sorry.
No, it's there's been way too many opportunities and they passed up every single one of them. I don't see it.
Yeah, it's I'm excited. I don't, and this is not a knock at Dave Filoni. I just don't see him making the type of movie that like would be compared to Andor, and that's fine. Like Sean Levy or Levi, I can't remember how you say his last name. He's doing Starfighter, so I'm leaning more towards this is going to be a Top Gun film. Like this is going to be a fun adventure. And I'm fine with that. Like I want to see, I do want to see more Andor-esque stuff. Like I'm not trying to say that, yeah, just give me all the goofy stuff in there. Like I want more stuff like Andor.
That's the beauty of Star Wars, is it's humongous and can have all of that.
We can have Andor and Young Jedi Adventures in the same universe, and it works beautifully together. Like
even Andor has the funny where he's like, hey, I found her, bam, like that was hilarious.
Oh my god, that's so good. Yeah, like you have that, you have the hospital moment with the alien grandmother. Like you can even have those moments in something like Andor, and it's great. It relieves the tension, it relieves all that. It's fun. But like also you can also have something like Resistance that's very happy-go-lucky and very like whimsical, and have a story like Tamara Vora's where like it is about the indoctrination into the First Order and the like de-engineering of the mind to get out of that mentality that like a very kids-focused show tackles. Like, and I think that's great. And like it's just one of those things. Like I've seen a lot of people that like want to hold Star Wars to this new metric, and I'm just like,
and you're talking about like, so I know for a fact Mara Jade is an impossibility, but I've looked at it over the years in a way that like there are so many other characters that embody at least a piece of her character, like Ahsoka, Rey Skywalker. Kleya is the most recent one, and I mean there's just so many other ones to focus on, that rich characters.
You can have the DNA of a lot of the expanded universe thrown in to the new canon, and I think there are stories like when I think about like the Old Republic, like things would have to be changed in the Old Republic to make it canon. There is way too much superhero bullshit going on in the Old Republic. But there's so many stories of the Old Republic. Like there are stories like Visage and Nihilus that could work in Disney canon, right? Mm-hmm. There are stories like Brianna and the handmaidens that Atris trained. Like that is a great story that does not conflict, and you could tell a story like that. I think the story of Mitra Surik in general, I know I'm like kind of just harping on KOTOR 2 just because it's so good. But like there are so many elements of KOTOR 2 and KOTOR 1. Like I think the idea of like the environmental message that you have on Manon in KOTOR 1, like you can have stories like that in Star Wars, and you can take those stories in the Old Republic, bring them into canon, and it doesn't mess with anything.
They even threw in the Rakatan Empire a couple of times.
Yeah.
I mean, you just sprinkle in where you can. You know, that's what I like about this.
Yeah, and this is the thing that I think that a lot of people forget about, like the late 90s to early 2000s expanded universe writers. Like just kind of going off the rails with Star Wars, and like they always kind of did. But like it's one of those things, like when you dig too deep into something like Darth Bane, you just have to power scale him and make him a supervillain. When you look into, someone like Revan, you have to make him this like godlike being. And then you have like Vitiate and the Eternal Empire.
Vitiate got so annoying after a while. It's like, you're an anime villain. Why aren't you dying?
Yeah, it's like he's died, 10,000 times or something like that. Like he's like, you could correct me if I'm wrong. He's like alive during the Phantom Menace, like in like the like Eternal Empire, and like some like gust of wind finally takes him out, or some dumb thing like that.
To be honest, I stopped. Like I was playing the expansions, and then the expansions got a little bit too goofy for me. Where I'm just like, I'm so tired of Vitiate. I'm so like they took everything that was good from level 1 to 50 and just whittled away at it until it was finally like.
It's just one of those things that, like, I know like the chat's kind of going off on like the sequels. It's like the whole like they're not that this is what they're saying, but like somehow Palpatine returned. I'm like, go play the Old Republic and like watch the Clone Wars. Look at Maul. Like somehow Maul returns. Somehow Vitiate returns 500 times. Read some old books. Palpatine comes back like
twice,
maybe
two or three times.
Like it's just one of those things that like I'm not trying to defend Palpatine coming back in the Rise of Skywalker. I don't mind it, but it's just like this isn't like out of the blue. This isn't like out of left field for Star Wars, and that's the thing is like to make a Knights of the Old Republic story canon, you would need to change a lot, and I think that's the same thing with Mara Jade. I think it's the same thing with Dash Rendar, like Corran Horn, Dash Rendar, Mara Jade. Like they all need to be changed, like to make it fit. Like Galen Merrick would need to be changed drastically to fit into the canon.
Yeah, I mean, I've had so many things over the years where I'm like, I know, I don't mind if say something like Mara Jade is changed. She doesn't have to be Luke's wife. She doesn't just put her in the same time period or around that, make stories. I don't care.
Yeah, you can have a character named Mara Jade that looks like Mara Jade, that behaves like Mara Jade, and you change elements of her story to fit within the narrative better. Because like this was before Disney bought Lucasfilm, and I know we've talked about this a bunch, is like I got tired of the superheroification of the expanded universe, or the animeification of the expanded universe, where just like it was all about who has the newest, greatest, most amazingest ability now, who's making black holes, which powerful space devil god has been awakened this time.
So many super weapons. The one thing that I didn't, so I don't want to cast any aspersions on this particular author, but I found Troy Denning's work in Star Wars to be repetitive and just outright annoying sometimes. And he was the last book in Legends, and like Han Solo loses an eye and then gets like a one regenerated or regrown and pop back into his head. Like weird mutilation stuff happens in that book. I mean, Troy Denning was the most uncomfortable part of Legends, but
yeah, I mean, I always go back and like say like Drew Karpyshyn for me was the one that like should only write video game stories where there's like more open-ended narratives. Like when he's like locked into writing a story that like starts at point A and ends at point B, like I feel like he fumbles it every time. And I think when we come forward in time to like what they said in the is like authors like Claudia Gray, like Charles Soule, Alexander Freed, James Luceno, and Timothy Zahn obviously are from the expanded universe, but like even those authors have like grown and adapted and refined their craft over the years. Like the stuff that James Luceno writes today, I think is better than what he was writing when he was doing like New Jedi Order books. And I think that we're overall getting better and better writers comparatively to what we were getting. And I think that's great. And I think having someone like Tony Gilroy in Andor is amazing. And I think there's so many other talented writers, screenplay writers, directors, and people that can really make an impact. Like I would love to see the people who worked on The Expanse do a Star Wars, show. Because I think the way that they handled the adaptation of the books was really, really good. And Stephen Strait, and it's funny because like Andor ended up being produced by Diego Luna and Expanse ended up being produced by Stephen Strait. Like I would love to see him come into Star Wars and get his touch and have, I think a Lost in Space style Star Wars story would be great to have. and just have that touch, that like Stephen Strait Expanse touch into Star Wars. I think it'd be fantastic.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like Star Wars has grown to a point where it's going to be going strong long after you and I are passed away. And
Yeah, I hope so. I really hope so because, like, I I think the new generation and kind of like I don't want to address everything in the chat, but like when I go to Emerald City Comic Con, when I go to New York Comic Con, I go to Star Wars Celebration, there are so many people dressed as Rey. There's so many people dressed as Kylo. There's some people dressed as Hux and Finn. Like the new generation of Star Wars is what's coming out today. And I do hope the sequels get the prequel treatment. I do hope they get their Clone Wars or something like it because like I love the sequels. If there's issues with the sequels. There's issues with the prequels. There's issues with the originals. Like congratulations. There's issues with Andor. Like the new generation of Star Wars, as long as people are still engaged in it and the stories are still worth telling. You're right. Like long after we're gone, in the same way, like there's people that grew up on the original trilogy that just aren't here anymore.
Yeah, I can't really read the chat because I'm my vantage point. I would look like an old man trying to get to it. But it's as far as like, so if you look at, there's a Star Wars project for every Star Wars project you dislike, there's probably 3 under the Disney umbrella that you love or at least really like. So I mean, just focus on the good.
Oh yeah.
Like just like if you don't like, say even drastically, if you don't like the sequels, read Legends, read the expanded universe.
Yeah.
There's so much of that.
And Disney's putting more effort into the expanded universe with their re-releases, with their re-recordings of the audiobooks than Fox and Lucasfilm ever did.
Yeah, and they're putting characters and stuff. Like I was reading mystery, or it was the book, something of the Shadow of the Sith, and they made the Errant Venture canon like the most innocuous Red Star Destroyer that was a casino. They made it canon, just writing it in the book, like little stuff like that. I love.
Oh yeah, we would have never gotten a Rakatan Empire mention.
Yeah,
if we'd have kept on with the status quo, that would have never happened. So yeah, like there's so much good stuff out there. Like I do feel with things like Andor, I think a lot of the books that have been coming out, I think even with the games that have been coming out, like, did you play Outlaws? I feel like we've talked about this.
I did. I haven't played the expansion, but I played the whole main story. Yeah.
So, yeah, a lot of people didn't like that, but it's just one of those things like when you like actually get away from the internet discourse, like I really enjoyed Outlaws. And I'm like, if I compare Outlaws to like almost any game outside of like some of like the X-Wing stuff and Knights of the Old Republic, like Outlaws is a much better game than most old Star Wars games were. I still like the Jedi games more, but like that's like again a testament of like the Jedi games are so good. I don't like Survivor as much as Fallen Order, but like it's still a good game. It's still a good story. Yeah, the new, like all the stuff that's been happening with Battlefront 3 recently.
That's crazy, and it's not going to happen. It'd be great if it did.
There's always a chance for stuff like that with like fan draw, and like obviously there's a draw and an appeal. There's also licensing stuff that has to be worked out and all sorts of stuff. But like
what this did do though, I did hear of a fan-made patch to Battlefront 2 that's going to add a lot of characters. So if you play it on PC and can do mods, they're going to add a bunch.
There's I was talking to Brandon Darth Chaco. There apparently now is a full mod total conversion kit for Starfield that turns it into a Star Wars game. Like
that's awesome.
Completely everything gets changed to Star Wars. So like that's really cool. It was funny because like we were talking about because we've been playing Star Citizen and we're like, if there were ever a Star Wars game like that played like Star Citizen in a much better state, like would never stop playing. Like would never ever stop. It's like you want me to drop $2,000 on an MC-75 cruiser? Absolutely. Swipe the credit card. Macro transactions. I will love you if I could do that. But no, like it's there's so much out there, like you said, and like the old stuff didn't go away. It's still there. I recently, not I shouldn't say recently, about a year ago, I reread like a couple of the X-Wing novels, and I'm just like, they haven't aged super well. They're still great stories. Like I reread Path of Destruction. Again, hasn't aged super well. Still super fun. I can go back and play Knights of the Old Republic anytime, and still an amazing story, still an amazing game. Like, yeah, there's just so much to love, and it's just like I don't focus on like I always say like I wasn't crazy about Ahsoka the show. I enjoyed a lot of it, but like it just didn't do it for me. We got like Andor and like the Acolyte and then Skeleton Crew and like Kenobi like all like within like 18 months of each other. I'm like, I'm going to be upset that I didn't like a show as much as everything else. I think like Mando season 3 is also in there. And I'm just like, yeah, like one thing I don't like as much as everything else, I think is okay when I'm enjoying so much else that, you know, was surrounded by it.
Yeah, it also especially helps when you watch it with people that also thoroughly enjoyed the thing. You can find joy in at least pieces of it.
Yeah, 100%. Like my girlfriend loved Ahsoka and loved the Acolyte because she's super into the High Republic and super into Rebels. So like that was like her jam, and I really liked Rebels. I liked Rebels more than I liked the Clone Wars. But like she very much has an attachment to Ahsoka. She very much has an attachment to the High Republic and Vernestra Rwoh. So like being able to sit and watch that with her and talk to her about it and get her insight. And I've said this forever. It's always infinitely more interesting to talk to someone who enjoys something than to someone who doesn't enjoy it, because the person who enjoys it will have so much more meaningful insight as to why they liked the thing versus someone who's just like, here's why I didn't like it. So like I'm always willing to hear people who like that they like Ahsoka's their favorite thing in Star Wars. I'm like, I would much rather talk to them than someone who like kind of agrees with me where it's like it's not my favorite thing Disney has put out.
Well, let me see. Do we have anything else? Do you have any final thoughts?
My final thoughts for Andor was I find it very strange to do rankings now for movies and like, well, where do I put Andor? I know it's not a movie, but I like Andor more than basically everything else now. Like my ranking kind of goes A New Hope, Andor, Rogue One, Empire Strikes Back. Like that's my top ranking right there. I'd put like Last Jedi at number 5, I think. But yeah, like it's so good, and it solidified A New Hope as my favorite. Rewatching A New Hope again, the despecialized edition, of course. Fuck you, Jabba.
Now, the one thought that came through my mind was like, I want to see Kleya live to when the First Order gets in power, so she can look at like the New Republic or somebody go, ha, idiots.
There is a plot line that I was thinking of since you said that, of like, because Mon Mothma was the one to demilitarize the New Republic, and I think you mentioning Kleya makes that so much better. Like some type of story about Mon Mothma and Kleya at odds with each other in the New Republic would be so compelling to watch. Like you can't, like, if you do this, the Empire will rise again. It may not be called the Empire. It may have a new face, blah, 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 but you cannot do this. And Mon, trying to be like, we can't continue on as rebels forever, blah, blah, blah. Like, I think that would be an amazing story to tell. It is Mon Mothma's good intention dooming the galaxy and dooming Hazian Prime.
That'd be a hell of a FACPOV.
Yeah.
Too. Well,
Force Awakens FACPOV coming in 10 years.
That should about do it for our Andor conversation. I know we went off the rails, but this was kind of a free-for-all episode anyway. I want to do more Star Wars stuff. Not sure when that's going to be. Not sure what the shape of that's going to be. Maybe, hell, talk about Empire Strikes Back or something next. Just something Star Wars. But I am Xanatos1138. You can find me on all socials, mostly TikTok. I'm trying to do Twitch. You can find me and Chase on a bunch of its FanBox content. Andor, going to have Doctor Who podcast, I believe. I think we're going to do a pre-recording tomorrow, but it's going to be over the weekend. So tomorrow or Sunday, come check that out for the latest episode of Doctor Who, which is tomorrow morning. Chase, where can they find you?
You could always find me primarily on TikTok at Forward Into the Black. Occasionally, you might see me pop up on Twitch or YouTube, but that is typically where I'm at, just talking about Star Wars and sometimes Star Citizen on the TikTok.
All right. Well, that's going to do it, and we'll see you guys later.
Bye.